Hello and welcome to our session on the mobile device draft policy consultation. My name is John Chasty. I'm a superintendent of education who works on special projects, and I work with a team of around 20 TDSB staff from different areas of the board on the development of the draft policy, the pre-consultation that preceded that, and working that policy through to the end when it eventually is passed by the Board of Trustees.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudine Terrell. I'm the principal at Humberside Collegiate in Learning Center 1, and I'm one of the co-leads for the cell phone mobile device use policy.
We'd like to start with the land acknowledgement. The land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. So what we're going to talk today is about the personal mobile device use in schools policy draft consultation. To give you a little bit of an overview on that, we are developing a cell phone mobile device use in schools policy, and this is going to play a critical role in supporting student success, belonging, and well-being in the TDSB. This work is a direct response to a resolution passed by the Board of Trustees on January 31st, 2024. And it also builds on the direction of the Ministry of Education in what they outlined in Policy Program Memorandum PPM 128, the Provincial Code of Conduct, which came out in April 28th, 2024, but started to be implemented in our schools on September 1st, 2024. We started with a pre-consultation phase, and that was focused on gathering input from school and community partners to inform the development of a draft policy. A survey for students and staff and community also went out, and note that we received over 22,000 surveys in that pre-consultation phase, which was completed by the end of June of last year. Over the course of the summer, our staff developed a draft policy, and this draft policy consultation, once approved by the trustees, started on Thursday, October 10th, and will last for 60 days, ending on December 10th, 2024. In terms of the timeline, what we've pulled up for you here is a very brief overview. So from May to July was the pre-consultation, and note that included student focus groups during summer school. And note that we were required to revise our Board Code of Conduct, PR 585, because of the policy memorandum released by the ministry. We also did a jurisdictional scan of all the types of policies and procedures relating to mobile device restrictions around the world, not just in Canada, but around the world. August 2024, the draft policy was developed. It was shared at the Governance Policy Committee. In September 2024, we began public consultation on the draft policy. And that will end on December the 10th. This, once it gets approved through our internal vetting processes, will go to the Board of Trustees in either January or February of 2025 to be approved as a policy. Note that the operational procedure, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes, is developed over the course of the year following the passing of the policy by the Board of Trustees. And I'll pass it over to Claudine now.
Thank you. And now we are going to take a look at the draft policy. So the draft policy is the mobile device use in schools, and here we outline the rationale of it. And this policy supports the implementation of the PPM 128 that John spoke about, and that is the revision to the Code of Conduct that took effect on September 1st. It also supports many other policies, including the use of information technology resources, the communication policy, the Caring Safe Schools policy, as well as the equity and human rights policies. And the objective of the policy is to outline the requirements for the appropriate use of personal mobile devices by students, staff, and other members of the TDSB community, to also advance a conducive learning environment and promote responsible digital citizenship, and to also look at reducing the negative impacts of excessive screen time and social media use on student achievement, well-being, and mental health. So we're going to look at a few of the definitions. Some of them I just want to point out. The first one is the instructional day and the instructional time. So when we speak about the instructional day, we're referring to, John, if you can just scroll up just a little bit. We're referring to the specific class period during which structured educational activities, lessons, teaching sessions occur within the school day. Instructional time includes breaks, lunch periods, and non-academic activities, focusing solely on the time dedicated to direct learning experiences for students. We also have so that was instructional time, sorry. And then the instructional day refers to the entire school day, including all scheduled periods of instruction, breaks, lunchtime, and other activities. We also have the definition of the personal mobile device, and that refers to any personal electronic device that can be used to communicate or to access to the internet. And this includes, and not limited to, cell phones, tablets, laptops, smartwatches, portable game consoles, and also includes fixtures and attachments that can be paired and connected to personal mobile devices. That includes earbuds and headphones. Lastly, the last definition that I wanted to bring to your attention is school community. And so for the purpose of this policy, this refers to TDSB students, employees, parent, guardians, caregivers, school council members, volunteers. And so as we go through the policy, we're going to scroll down a bit more and look at, we cover the guiding principles, looking at the fact that the TDSB upholds its commitment to learning through technology, digital citizenship, and equity of access to technology. And we're going to scroll down just a bit more and look at some other key components. We also have the one-to-one student device program, which is to promote equity of access to technology. And the board strives to provide every TDSB student with a mobile device for educational purposes through the one-to-one device program. And then we have restrictions to social media platforms. So this policy looks at the fact that the TDSB will restrict access to all social media platforms on school networks and school devices. And so we have already established a list of social media platforms that have been restricted, which have been banned from schools. And so students and staff, parents, caregivers, the TDSB community, when they enter a school, are unable to access those social media platforms. And then we go into the definition of members of the school community and talks about specifically the fact that members of the school community are expected to respect the need of others to study and work in an environment that is conducive to learning and teaching. And so all members of the school community must not use their personal mobile devices during instructional time, except under the following circumstances: for educational purposes, for health and medical purposes, and to support special education needs. Personal mobile devices must not be used for accessing or distributing any inappropriate content, engaging in cyberbullying and/or legal activities as outlined in the communication. And so some of the specifics involved in this policy look at students in grade 6 and below, and then students in grade 7 to 12. And so with the exception of using your personal mobile device for education, health, and medical purposes, as well as to support special education needs, we look at what it looks like in a school in grade 6 and below. And it says that students are required to store their personal mobile device out of view and powered off or set to silent mode throughout the full instructional day, except when their use is explicitly permitted by the educated or educator or designated school staff. And then for students in grades 7 to 12, they're required to store their personal mobile device out of view or powered off or set to silent mode during instructional time, again, except for when their use is explicitly permitted by the educator or designated school staff. And so in further detail, we have that students in grades 7 to 12 may use their personal mobile devices during non-instructional times, such as during recess, breaks, and lunch periods, provided that the use does not disrupt school operations and the learning environment or contravene applicable TDSB policies and procedures. And this also applies to school staff and says that during instructional time, staff may use their personal mobile device during instructional time for educational purposes or in cases of emergency. And personal mobile device use should be minimized during instructional time to make sure that the full attention is given to teaching and supporting students. And then when we look at, we have a duty to accommodate, and it outlines here that the TDSB will uphold its duty to provide reasonable accommodations for the use of personal mobile device use to the point of undue hardship for students and staff in accordance to the Ontario Human Rights Code and the board's human rights policy. There's information regarding emergency situations, and again, personal mobile devices must not be used by students when a bomb threat, hold and secure, or lockdown protocols are initiated. When we look at enforcement and compliance, students are encouraged not to bring their personal mobile device to school unless required for educational purposes, health and medical purposes, or to support special educational needs. We're asking that parents, guardians, and caregivers reinforce the expectations and standards. And we also outline here that deliberate non-compliance of the policy will result in disciplinary actions in accordance to PPM 145, which outlines progressive discipline and promoting positive student behavior. And as we go down, and so we talk about privacy considerations. And so students, staff, and other members of the school community are responsible for the security and privacy of their personal mobile devices. The policy is to be communicated to all students, staff, parents, and guardians, caregivers at the beginning of each academic year and posted on the school's website for easy access. And again, we speak about the fact that the point of this policy is really to address look at the screen time that students have on their personal mobile devices, and it's in the spirit of improving students' achievement, well-being, and mental health, and enhancing learning in the classroom. And that is the policy in a nutshell.
Thanks, Claudine. And we're going to pull the PowerPoint back up again. To put the policy draft consultation into a little bit of a perspective, as relates to policy, operating procedure, and Ministry of Education policy program memorandums. We think back to last April when the Ministry of Education released PPM 128. Letters were sent home to parents. It was relating specifically to mobile devices and talked about the restrictions and the obligation of public school boards in Ontario to develop a policy to accompany those restrictions that were part of the Code of Conduct from the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education also said that their restrictions needed to be in place for September 1st of the school year. So in your child's school, you will have noticed that there are very specific guidelines relating to the use of personal mobile devices beginning in September. At the same time, last year, we put together a very robust pre-consultation process for the policy with over 22,000 surveys. And what happened as a result of that is that feedback went into developing the policy draft that Claudine just discussed. So we may get asked the question today, we've certainly been asked up until now, well, all of that feedback from the 22,000 surveys, we don't see it in the draft policy. There's an important reason for that, is that the draft policy is more of a statement of intent, governing principles, and it's the end result adopted by the board in public. It's rules that apply system-wide, and it's non-negotiable. It's a must. It's what we all want to achieve. And it's also approved by the Board of Trustees. On the other hand, the operating procedure, which we discussed earlier, which is developed after the policy is passed by the trustees, that's more into the very specific details where some of the feedback we got in the pre-consultation, it'll show up there. It's a document issued through the Director of Education. It's a process-oriented document, and it outlines steps or processes to carry out a governing policy. It's basically a how-to and has detailed instructions. It is also mandatory, but it may have some optional steps in different situations that we'll list out. Who will do what, when, and how are also part of that particular operating procedure. So we've got the PPM from the ministry with the rules that began in September. We've got our pre-consultation that happened last year on the policy. We've got our draft policy, which is right now what we're talking about today, and consultation till December 10th. And then we've got the policy, which will be passed by the trustees in either January or February, followed by an operating procedure, which will be developed in the year after the policy is passed by the trustees. I'll pass it on to Claudine.
We want to thank you for participating in our presentation today. And if you wanted to take another look at the draft policy, you can click on the link there or just log on to the TDSB public website and then /mobile device policy. There's also a QR code there, and we're inviting you to provide direct feedback on the policy draft. And you can scan that with your mobile device. We also have some mental health resources for students from kindergarten to grade 12. And you can click on the QR code to the left of the picture there. And then for immediate mental health resources, such as Kids Help Phone, CAMH, you can click on the QR code to the bottom right.
Just to finish off, I wanted to go back to the link to the school policy draft, the personal mobile device in schools policy draft. You will also find on that landing page of the TDSB website a recording of a public webcast that we did a couple of weeks ago that covered much of the same material that you're hearing about today, but also had a very robust Q&A, question and answer period from members of the school community that we went into with various members of the staff who represented those areas, for example, Caring and Safe Schools or our technology area. and several other areas, and as well as principals who are actually implementing PPM 128 in schools. So we welcome you to go to the landing page and to check out that webcast for the Q&A aspect of things. And with that, we're going to close our session today. So we would like to thank you for listening to us, and we hope that you get the opportunity to go to the board's website, look at the draft in more detail, and provide some direct feedback. Claudine, you can close.
Again, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you very much for supporting us with the implementation of the policy as of September 1st, and enjoy the rest of the sessions today.